One of the discussion points that never seems to go away in the practical shooting space is whether factory guns like this plastic Glock 47 can measure up against the quote-unquote gamer guns like this beautiful handmade 2011 from LimCat Custom. So in this video, we're going to be doing several drills side by side between these two guns to see if there is any measurable performance change as I shoot these. Now, I've been competing and training with this Glock for a little over 2 years now. I'm very familiar with the grip angle, the trigger, and things like that. Instead of sitting here talking about these things, we can just find out the hard way. So let's jump right into it. Okay, so the first exercise we're gonna do is going to be group shooting at 20 yards. There's no time limit at all here. I just wanna see the tightest group I can print with zero time pressure at all. I'm frankly torn on which gun to use first. So we'll just do the Glock first and then the LimCat. All right, 10 rounds from the Glock. Here we go. That felt a little sloppy on my part. I could have definitely slowed that down and tightened it up. So I will shoot at roughly the same pace as long as my sights are also where I feel like they should be. So here's the LimCat. Okay, just by walking up here, I can tell that this is pretty sloppy all around. Man, my hand is hurting. If we're talking about points, we have 9 alphas and 1 Charlie for each of these. Here's what we're looking at. So this is the Glock, 9 alphas, 1 Charlie, 1 touching the paster. 9 alphas, 1 Charlie, 1 touching the paster for the LimCat. Okay, let's do another group and let's tighten this up quite a bit. I'm gonna shoot much slower. I was kind of slapping the trigger and I shouldn't have been doing that. So 10 more rounds from the Glock. Let's tighten this up even more. Okay, that still felt all over the place. My hands are not playing nicely with me today. Now 10 more from the LimCat. Gosh, okay, I can tell right now that the LimCat is just, it feels like it's returning a little bit better. So you can see from your end the holes that got created, but we had the old group pasted up. So now let's see what we're actually working with for the Glock here. We're kind of taking up the whole A zone, right? I paid for the whole A zone. I'm gonna use the whole A zone. So again, 9 alphas, 1 Charlie, and then 1 touching the paster. So same thing. And then here we have nothing touching the paster, but 2 Charlies, but the shots we did have were much tighter, and then these were just kind of off to the side. So I would give maybe a slight advantage to the LimCat, just seeing how much tighter we got when I took my time. I can almost guarantee I know exactly when those 2 Charlies from the LimCat group happened. I was really just kind of getting after it. One thing I definitely need to work on is slowing down when I say I'm gonna do slow fire shooting. I want to shoot the moment I see it like anywhere near the aiming reference. I was being impatient for a lot of those shots, and of course that did not make for as good of a science experiment, but you see the results on target. So let's just move on. Like I said in the last video, when I'm doing doubles and something weird is happening, like in this case where all of my shooting is weird, I switched to a lower round count drill that allows me to have more awareness, like 1 shot return. So we're gonna do just that. I'll do 10 rounds of each, and hopefully from this profile view, you'll be able to see how the gun is tracking when we draw a line, and we'll do that. All right, so here's the Glock. And again, we're just gonna fire 1 shot and see how quickly we return right back to that paster. Yeah, so I'm settling above, and that's probably what's contributing to those high second shots on the doubles. Again, same thing. Let me switch what my firing hand is doing a little bit. That felt better. That was less good. Okay. Cool. Now let's talk about the LimCat. And by talk about, I mean shoot. Yeah, so something's happening in my structure where the dot with both guns kind of just wants to settle higher, and then you can see me like draw it back down. Ideally, we want that gun to like snap up and then come straight back down to where we were aiming. So I think that was 4 shots. Let's do 6 more on this. So we came lower that time. Much better. Weird. That felt good. I think that was 10. Here is the Glock. And this is where the LimCat's really gonna shine, right? So that slower fire marksmanship, here's the Glock. Again, all A zone hits. We don't care about that though. I'm really analyzing like the way the gun's tracking. And you're gonna get value from that hopefully by seeing the profile view and the comparison I'll put up. And then I'm getting value from it by seeing what's happening through my own eyes and pairing that with what I'm feeling whenever the weird things happen, so I know what to change in the pressures and correct. So we're over here, a little bit of side-to-side play, a little bit of extra like honk, pulling the gun down as I shoot. And with the LimCat, you see it's much tighter. Look at that, you can cover that with a sideways fist, or really like 3 fingers covers that. And that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 rounds, I can count. That's good. Again, much tighter. And for the first few shots, and you'll probably notice this too, it felt like the dot actually traveled more. And then I kind of tightened that up. And then I had a couple where it went whoom and came down and came back up. And then towards the end there, especially with those 2 that I shot like back to back pretty quickly, I just felt so confident. I had to send that shot. So bam, bam, just like that. So if we can do that more, then that'll be good. I'm thinking one more drill. Let's do wide transitions. Okay, so we got 3 targets here. We'll start with designated target, and I think we might finish on that. So bam, 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 bam. And that'll allow us to have the shorter transition and a wider transition. So I've got 2 mags of 20, and this is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So I'll get 4 reps from each gun. All right, here we go. Now we can just make the right target the designated target. I like that a lot. That'll kind of even things out. Here we go. That felt better. Cool, so that is the Glock. I'm feeling a little bit more tuned up now that we're not overthinking the grip. Sometimes it's better to like move to a bigger exercise too, because you can see we had a bunch of weirdness happening, and I'm shooting at about the same pace that I'm shooting doubles, but you can see we're not seeing those big high hits anymore either. So sometimes it can be counterproductive to get too far in the weeds on a very isolated exercise like that, especially if you're experiencing quite a bit of mental frustration, because you could see like I was dealing with that. But here, we're not really seeing it. It's like all A zone hits except 1 Charlie here. Let's move over here. A couple line breakers, but all alphas on the farther target. And then here, we've got 2 Charlies, and this is from the very first rep, kind of a drag on, and then not sure when this happened, but you can see relatively respectable hits. Let's paste these up and do the exact same thing. So here we go. Let's make sure I have exactly 20. Oh. Well, we didn't do the drill right, so there's that. There's that. Let's do it correctly this time. I mean, the shooting was the shooting though. A lot of trigger freeze on that first shot. You would think with the amount of travel in a lock trigger that my finger movement would have kept that from happening. Let's not overthink that, and let's just do the drill correctly. Okay. So that's 1 mag. Now we'll make the right target the designated target. Okay. And that is all she wrote. And I can already tell you these hits are going to be a little questionable compared to the Glock. You can draw your own conclusions as to why. So here, 2 Charlies. I think we had 2 Charlies on the right target as well. You can see, I think the alphas are a little denser, so there's that. But we've got those high Charlies, similar to how we saw them in the doubles. And then instead of having all A-zone hits here in the center target, we've got 3 Charlies off to the left. Those could be drag-ons or drag-offs. You probably saw them better than I did. And then here, we're seeing the same thing we saw with the right target, where you see a couple Charlies kind of up high. And I'll tell you right now, those were from the first 2 reps, absolutely. The other thing we can do is look at the timer, because the timer doesn't lie or make excuses. So let's look at the Glock drills first. So the first run was a 298, next was a 316, then a 288, then a 298. So hovering right around probably 3 seconds on average. So 298, 288, 316, 298. I'd call that roughly 3 seconds on average. I'll put the actual average up somewhere. And then for the LimCat, we had 461 because that big trigger freeze that happened, and then a 286, then a 303, then a 282. So if you take the huge split from that trigger freeze out of the equation, we're still at roughly 3 seconds even. We did have 2 reps in the 280s. We'd have to do more reps to see if there's any measurable difference, but I'm telling you right now, it's not a blatantly crazy time difference, right? So I would challenge anybody that says, oh, well, the moment you get a nicer gun in your hands, everything kind of changes. That's not the case. The fundamentals are still the fundamentals, as we've demonstrated here. And we could shoot a stage, but we're losing daylight. And I'll tell you right now, the moment you start throwing movement and actual stages into the mix, these differences are going to balance out even more between different types of guns, because now you're throwing things besides shooting into the mix. Whenever there's athleticism and non-shooting actions that have to happen, the differences between the raw shooting performance that these guns offer you are going to matter less and less when more and more of the score is comprised of things that don't have to do with the shooting. So I hope that made sense and wasn't too ranty. Either way, I'm very excited to be shooting this gun again. A huge shout out to the Lim family, the owners of LimCat Custom, for doing such a great job refinishing this gun. So I originally won this at the Mississippi section championship, and they refinished the entire gun, and I think it looks pretty awesome. So check them out. If you've made it this far into the video, you can tell that the shooting between the Glock and the 2011 are frankly not that different. And there's pretty much like 2 ways to interpret this, right? Either A, the fundamentals are the fundamentals, so shooting is going to be shooting regardless of the gun that you have in your hand. I think there's some validity to that statement, as you could tell. But also B, if I can do exactly what I'm able to do with a gun that I've spent a ton of time on, the Glock, with a 2011 that I'm very unfamiliar with, then you could also maybe say that there's a lot more potential for performance in the 2011 if I'm already shooting as well as I am with my Glock. And I think the only way to figure out which of these statements holds a heavier truth in it is to simply spend some extra time on this platform and talk about it in 6 to 12 months. So we're gonna do just that. If you've shot both of these platforms before and you've got your own comments about it, be sure to drop those in the comment section below. Again, hats are on the website. You can schedule a class for 2026 by going to bettermarksman.co.com. And as always, thank you for watching, and I hope this video made you a better marksman.